Okay, hello there everyone. We're actually live casting this right now. The game is being played live. I'm not actually watching a replay. I've been trying to get a little bit of warm-ups in for that Faction War tournament. This is one of the games from the tournament. In fact, it is the first game of the best of 3 series. I guess we might as well do the whole series now. Probably not going to do that for all the series. Well, yeah, that would be ridiculous. I think there's 8 players, so 8 permutations. Yeah, that would be crazy. So, let's crack on with it then. We've got Chaos versus Space Marines for this first matchup here between Bruce and Vindy. And Vindy took it, well, in fact, both players so far just going for very standard builds. We're on Caldaris Refinery. The maps are rolled randomly. Each player has 1 veto per best of 3. And we did see both vetoes actually being used. I can't even remember what they were using them on. But either way, here we are now in game. I don't like this Chaos Lord play from Bruce, just chasing the Force Commander, eating a load of damage. Basically, he didn't achieve anything. I think that Chaos Lord would have been much better off charging into the ranged units. It's something I often see in lower tier play. I don't really know what Bruce is doing there. Yeah, the battle cry damage buff there from the FC, you see that he was getting constant swings and specials, and now even if the specials miss, they're still giving 10% extra damage to all the nearby Space Marine infantry, even though the special misses. So you're still getting value even when the special misses, so long as you have troops nearby. Bruce is feeling inspired. I just played a game where I went against Vindy and got absolutely wrecked by double CSM, double AC ticks. In fact, it was just 1 AC tick into a fast blood crusher. So clearly Bruce is feeling a bit inspired, I think, and going for a double CSM himself. I don't like double CSM versus Space Marine because, well, Tax beat CSM 1v1, and Scouts, whilst you are meant to counter them with ranged units, CSM are not very... well, they're just a low DPS ranged unit, right? For the cost, they don't do a lot of damage compared to, let's say, Shooter Boys or Guardians or even Termagants for the cost. The advantage of CSM is that they're very tanky, but you don't want tanky against Scouts, you want high damage to bleed them. So, I don't know, I don't like it. Now, you don't really have a lot of other decent options, really, to counter the Scouts. In that regard, you don't have any bursty range damage tools as Chaos, so just forget it. Just don't even get those tools. Just beat the Space Marine in melee and gen bash them. So typically you'd see Noise Marines, but it looks like there's going to be a big push here. I mean, all 5 of the units here from Bruce Campbell are moving up this eastern flank, and we'll see what he can make out of it. Force Commander is hanging around. What's he got? He's got the Artificer armor, so he's got his tanky... he's got his tanky armor. I don't really know what Dingus Khan means. Yeah, Vindy will be in an amazing spot here. Deimos is right. If he can stop this bash. Because this is a massive amount of commitment here coming out of Bruce. Bruce is a Chaos Lord getting precariously close to dying here, walking kind of headfirst into Devastators. Devastators going to be resetting up here in the face of these heretics. They've got to get out. And now the CSM are basically neutered, not really achieving a whole lot, shooting at Tactical Space Marines here. 2-on-1, obviously they're going to beat Tax, but again, they take ages to do it. And it's like you've got 800 requisition worth of units right here, not really achieving a whole lot. CSM now desperately running into melee to try and tie up the Devastators, which they do, taking out a Devastator model there with their melee, another one dying to the Heavy Bolters, but he pays for it with a CSM, and the problem right now for Bruce... ooh, this is a good flank though, good flank from the Heretics. We see For the Emperor dropped onto the... okay, beautiful flank here from Havocs and Aspiring Champion Heretics. For the Emperor was dropped on the Tax there to give them a bit more power. Okay, grenade going in, that looks like a beautiful grenade. Ooh, taking out one of the models instantly and forcing the Havocs into a retreat. So now that means that the Havocs weren't in a position to suppress the Force Commander and prevent him from getting into melee. So Vindicare has successfully defended the push. Vindicare opting for a double Devastator build. Now what we were saying before is, the reason why Bruce losing that push was so influential is, look, he's only just getting his second generator up now, whereas Vindicare has had triple generators up for most of this map. Now Bruce has also had a node over here, which is the equivalent of an extra generator, but no one has owned this contested power here. So if we take a look at the resource income, okay, Bruce is currently on 70 power with 49 income. In fact, the income is now equal, because look, even though there's 2 gens here, he owns the node, so that's equivalent to having 1 node and 3 gens. So they're equal in power income, but the general resources are favouring Vindy. Up about 100 requisition right now, but obviously if he starts incurring a bit more bleed in his scouts, then that isn't going to be the case. Yes, as General JB says in the chat there, the scouts are putting in a lot of oomph when it comes to the map control. They're putting in a lot of work right now. Heretics really do struggle to compare in that regard, and the other thing with Heretics, when you're pushing them really deep, like Bruce is doing with that Heretic going on the north edge of the map towards the natural wreck of Vindy, you risk getting naded in retreat. So yeah, as I mentioned in the chat here, we might see a Librarian in Tier 2 here for Vindicare, because that gives you synergy with the Force Commander. You can give him the Power Fist and have him chase down vehicles with Veil of Time. But also, if you're relying on Devastators against Chaos, Bloodletters are going to be a huge problem in Tier 2. The Power Melee Jumping Squad that can't be suppressed, yeah, it's pretty scary for the Devastators, that's for sure. So one of the things you can get is you can get the Librarian, give them Veil of Time, and then at least it removes their setup time and their teardown time and makes them faster, and that way you can evade the Bloodletters. But as mentioned in the chat as well, that is going to be a very micro-intensive strategy, so whilst in theory that might work, we'll have to wait to see in practice if that's actually going to be effective or not. Okay, Bruce appears to have been bleeding quite a lot. I didn't notice if he's lost many CSM models, to be honest, but for some reason he's very low in requisition. He's doing okay in terms of the map control. This being captured by Vindy is not very good for Bruce. He needs to protect those natural requisition points here, I think, quite a bit better, because that's clearly hurting him right now. And to be honest, this is kind of a problem that the Chaos tend to have against Space Marines. The Space Marine models don't bleed, but even if you don't lose CSM, you're still going to lose a lot of Heretics, and that can really sort of grind away at your economy over time. We see fully upgraded grenade launcher Heretics as well here. I don't know when he made that purchase, but that'll help him. I think it's a good choice, good against the Devastators, and gives him more focus fire to deal with this tanky Force Commander. Bruce is now going Tier 2, and as expected, we actually do see that Librarian on the way. Yeah, I think those double ticks have probably bled Bruce quite a bit. Let's have a look at the pop values at the moment. Pretty even on pop. You got to remember that the pop impacts how much upkeep you're going to pay, because you pay for upkeep on every unit you have over 30 pop. So the more pop you have, the more upkeep you pay. But they're actually very even in regards to pop. If we look at their rec income, they're pretty much on par as well. It's just taking a bit of time for this rec point to mature back to plus 30. If Bruce got this rec point, he'd actually be in a great spot. Chaos Lord, I must admit, doesn't really appear to have done anything this game so far. Might want to pick up the Drain Life War gear in Tier 2. Not yet, but later on if the Force Commander starts pumping out a lot of upgrades on himself. In fact, to be honest, Drain Life is going to be great anyway to help deal with the Librarian. But right now, Bruce Campbell, first and foremost, he needs to get access to Bloodletters, because he needs to kill these Devastators. He doesn't really have a counter right now. They're doing really well. Here you go, Veil of Time dodges the grenade launcher barrage from the Heretics there with a Veil of Time, resetting up his Devastators and forcing off the Chaos Lord who was flanking around this Dev squad. Really nice use of Veil of Time there. I mean, that is literally 10 out of 10 perfect Veil of Time usage on that Devastator there. Nothing crazy. But, you know, dodges the grenade launcher, which he wouldn't have done without Veil of Time, rotates and covers his allied Devastator squad and forces off the Chaos Lord, which he wouldn't have been able to do without Veil of Time. Yeah, the problem for Bruce right now is he's got like 700 million power and absolutely no wreck. It's really, really annoying. So you get Drain Life, you can potentially snag that Librarian, pick him up, and then chop him to pieces with the Bloodletters. And also, even if he uses Battlecry, Drain Life will pin the model in place, so it controls this really, really powerful Force Commander that Vindy's got right now. You see, he's picked up the Teleporter pack, and he's got the Power Fist as well. So a lot of really scary upgrades on that guy. And just looking at Bruce's army, I mean, he feels like he's very ragtag. You know, the Chaos Lord is pushing way too deep. Isolated. Bloodletter's getting some decent damage there onto the Tactical Space Marine. He's going to use a Demonic Sacrifice, but not really achieving too much there. I was going to say maybe he was using that to try and wipe the Devastators, but yeah. Feels kind of mismicroed. Scout's doing a beautiful job here from Vindy. Look at this. Captured this point, going to be fully matured in his favour, in fact is, and decapped the natural wreck once again. This is absolutely crazy. The pressure on Bruce's requisition has been immense, and now this Force Commander with Veil of Time with the Teleport pack, just bleeding another CSM there with his Power Fist. Oh my god, then a Smite comes in from the Librarian and another CSM is bled. This is so much requisition for Bruce to pay. I mean, yeah, he just can't afford it. He can't even keep his units fully reinforced. Look at this, he's got Bloodletters in the base, only just fully reinforcing them now because he's just constantly draining requisition. Now the Force Commander's here again, can one-shot the Heretics with his Power Fist. Draining Life goes off there, and you can see how it controls the Force Commander, but the problem is, there's no follow-up damage. Heretics slapping a Force Commander is not going to achieve a whole lot. And now the Chaos Lord moves in, but the Force Commander's got 4 the Emperor on him. Going to be using Battlecry, spamming special attacks. I mean, he's a one-man army right now. I think he will get forced off eventually by the Bloodletters here, but wow, I was going to say very little hope of actually killing him, but in fact, they probably will. CSM in retreat path, securing that KO before the Tactical Marines with the Kraken Rise can actually take out another model from that CSM squad. So that is a victory for sure, but will it help? I don't know. There is only 1 gen up right now for Bruce. To be fair, that doesn't even matter. Bruce doesn't care about power right now. Let's have a look at Bruce's power. 220 power for Bruce to only 66 to Vindicare. Why is that? Well, because he now has a Dreadnought on the field. So I don't know, it just feels like by the time Bruce can consolidate and deal with one threat that Vindy throws at him, Vindy's got another one coming out, and that's obviously a problem for Bruce, but it's caused by the constant map control pressure from Vindy. It's been beautiful. Look at this once again. So he's got scouts over here distracting these poor 2 CSM squad because he can't even afford to fully reinforce them. Meanwhile, scouts with just 2 models, super cheap, low upkeep, decapping that fucking requisition all game long. And here comes the Dreadnought, and there die Heretics. Another Havoc model bleeding. I mean, this is awful. This is so rough if you're Bruce Campbell. He is just bleeding everywhere I look. Bloodletter killed over here. Will the Chaos Lord prevent the cap? Nope. Bit of a miss micro, I think, there. Probably could have killed the weak and knocked him away, but yeah, it doesn't matter. This is a GG. There's just nothing Bruce can do. Bleeding, bleeding, bleeding. By the time Bruce got a counter there to the Dreadnought, Vindy would be going tier 3. Next thing you know, he's got Terminators. It's just like, Okay. Okay. That's the game. So, game 1 going to Vindicare. I suppose I'll see you guys in game 2. Okay, we're going into game 2 now. We got Vindicare moving on to the Apothecary. We've got Bruce Campbell moving on to the Plague Champion. Very fitting, actually. They're both playing as the sort of healers. Whoa! Elevation weirdness going on right now. Yeah, so both playing as their healers for their respective factions. The way this tournament works, in the best of threes, you've got to play all 3 heroes, basically. So you have to swap no matter whether you win or you lose. And then when it gets to the best of 5s in the actual like playoffs, I think that's a double elimination tournament. It's happening on the 28th of January. That's going to be a best of 5. So in that case, you can replay heroes as much as you want, so long as you haven't won already with the hero. So you still need to win with all 3 heroes of your faction in order to win the tournament, which I think is quite cool. It means you can't just one-trick one hero. You see a bit more diversity of matchups. But here you go, let's see if things are going to change. So straight away we see a little bit of variation here from Vindicare. We do not see him getting that second scout this time. Really big fight here. This is literally all the units that are on the map at the moment going to be taking an engagement here. Not really sure about that Doom Blast. Didn't actually suppress the Tactical Marines, so probably was quite ill-advised. I think the attrition will eventually mean... Oh wow, Bruce retreated out of there really early. So actually Bruce is going to lose that fight, which is really, really bad for him, because he actually had 4 units there, whereas Vindy only has 3. So Vindy gets his power node up and he's building a generator. I don't really know why he's not building more generators, given his lack of starting troops. He should be able to afford more generators no matter what. Yeah, okay, now he does it. He could have built that earlier. Could have built that a little earlier. It doesn't make that much of a difference. You're talking like 3 extra power, but there you go. So it's going to be Devastators versus Havocs. Oh god, this really is a mirror. This is as close as you can get to a mirror without actually having a fucking mirror. Plague Champion versus Apo. Havocs versus Devastators. Now, both the starting units here for both of the factions have some utility against setup teams. Scouts, of course, can get their leader and get frag grenades, which you can't just walk scouts forward into a Havoc and then nade them. That won't work, but you can abuse a lot of the line of sight blockers on this map in order to flank around the line of sight and hit the Havocs with a nade, and that can counter Havocs pretty damn effectively. You've got Shotgun Blast, which can do a similar thing, but is basically nowhere near as good because it doesn't do damage. You don't really have much of a follow-up. Now, Grenade Launcher Heretics can also be used to counter Devastator setup teams. You obviously have your GL Barrage, which is an on-demand knockback ability, but also you can just fire over the line of sight blockers. So you could put your GL ticks here, fire over and hit these devs. So we'll probably see a bit of both of that. Interesting that we see the Aspiring Champion coming out for the Bruce Campbell's AC tick over there, rather than the grenade launchers first. Very strange that Vindy has opted for the Armour of Purity before any other upgrades. So, wow, he gives 1.5 HP regen? Oh my god, the HP regen meta is real. I did not realize that. That is insane. That's a really chunky amount of HP regen, but the primary reason you normally get this war gear is the 35% reduction in heal cooldown. But with the cooldown being that low at level 1, you actually generally lack the energy to just use heal every time it comes off cooldown, so it's a bit strange. So normally you would get this gear in tier 2 when you get the power axe, or you get the accessory improved medical equipment. Oh wow, that was quite unlucky to lose a tactical marine straight away there from the Havoc. I don't know if Vindy's noticed. Okay, he has. Yeah, so because the Havoc will shoot at the nearest thing, so it's shooting at the attacks up front, then he snuck the Devastators around the back, and now they're able to suppress the Havoc, and because the Devastators have suppressed the Havoc, the Havocs can't retaliate to suppress the devs, so they win that fight. Okay, here we go. I was gonna say, if you wanted tankiness generally, rather than getting this war gear in tier 1, you would go for the Sanguine Chainsword. But he's got both, so now he's got a really tanky APO. Sanguine Chainsword improves his DPS by quite a lot. It goes from, I think, about 26 DPS to 38.5, so, you know, nearly a 50% increase in DPS. Now obviously 50% increase is not amazing when you start off doing terrible DPS, but still, it's a huge increase in his damage. But more importantly perhaps, you get increased charge range, so he can get into melee combat with ranged units much quicker, and he heals 25 HP with every melee attack and 10 HP with every pistol shot. So your APO becomes extremely tanky with this war gear, especially in committed melee fights. Not so good when he's chasing things in the open, but committed melee fights he becomes brutal. Look at this Plague Sword on the Plague Champion there. You actually seen one of the ASM there got killed by the plasma pistol shot from this war gear. So it not only swaps out the bolter with the Plague Sword, but you also get a plasma pistol. Now normally plasma pistols are pretty crap, to be honest. They normally do about 7 DPS, but for some reason, the Plague Sword's plasma pistol is very unique in that it gives him a 13 plasma DPS pistol, which is pretty nuts actually. 50% increase on that damage to heavy infantry, so that would be 19.5 DPS, which is actually higher than any other sidearm in tier 1. The Lord Commissar has the best default sidearm, and that is 17 DPS piercing. So the 13 DPS here, plasma, would be an effective 19.5 DPS against light infantry. So yeah, it's really, really good. Because even that 17 DPS that the Lord Commissar does, look at that. Did you just see that? 5 little shots there killed a dev. Even that 17 DPS that the Lord Commissar does, obviously against heavy infantry, that's going to be weaker. So yeah, that plasma pistol can be very powerful, and of course the Plague Sword is very powerful as well. That's also unique because it ignores melee resist, so that's going to be tough for the ASM. But Vindy, it appears, is just managing his economy beautifully, because look how many units that Vindicare is able to field right now. Ooh, Grenade Launcher Heretics are now on the field along with the Aspiring Champion. They can fire over the wall onto the devs, but they're a little bit scared right now because he's noticed, as Bruce, the ASM are lurking around and probably wanting to jump onto that Chaos Heretic squad. Tactical Marine has been upgraded with a Flamer at the top here, but unfortunately there appears to be a little bit of a mismicro from Vindy. However, is Bruce watching, because Devastators are there to protect the Tactical Marine Flamer. Havocs are now moving forward for Bruce up there, and I think they will be able to successfully defend that gen farm. It doesn't appear that there's anything that can help Vindy get rid of that Havoc squad. Shotgun Scouts are attempting the flank. CSM are shooting them, but they're not going to be able to force them off in time. They're actually just going to go into melee with the Havocs. Devastators have actually managed to keep the AC ticks over here suppressed, and so the Flamer can continue its job burning down the generators. Scouts then pull back. ASM are going to take over the job. They can jump onto the Havocs instead. ASM going to be jumping on the back lines in order to disrupt the Aspiring Champion Heretics. Touch of Nurgle is activated on these Heretics to give them that extra damage and healing for the rest of their models when they die. And that is going to secure the victory there for Bruce in that engagement. However, he did lose 2 generators before that, and if we look at the map is of course extremely red. So we've got a 3 to 0 cap in favour of Vindicare for now. I don't know how long that's going to be. Okay, not long at all. It is now 2 to 0 cap. Bruce is doing his best to make use of this time he's got where Vindicare is off the field and cap up some of that map. But here comes Vindicare once again. Vindicare obviously outnumbering Bruce quite tremendously right now. That extra 2 units in tier 1 is really quite something, especially when you consider that Scouts are faster than any unit that Bruce has right now, and Tactical Space Marines cap 50% faster as well. That combination there is going to make it very difficult for Bruce to maintain map control. I would suggest to Bruce that he picks one part of the map and sort of consolidates his forces there, rather than splitting up his forces a lot. I think if he's splitting up his forces, he's going to get pulled apart at the moment. Seeing this happen, you see, he's got all of his forces down here right now, trying to deal with these 3 units of Vindy, but Vindy at this time has got double Devastators and flame attacks pushing up the top. They're going to quite easily bash these generators, and that is going to be a wrap, I think, for the game. I mean, Bruce is already tier 2, Vindy isn't yet, Vindy's only going tier 2, so maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh for Bruce, but we'll see. Yeah, Bruce knows what's going on. I think he probably could have tried getting a Blood Crusher or something, but let's have a look. Yeah, he could have had a Blood Crusher coming out super soon, and that Blood Crusher probably would have come out on the field by the time Vindy got to tier 2, but the problem is by the time then Vindy reached tier 2, and the Blood Crusher is out, Vindy's going to have the resources to start a Dreadnought. Then you've got triple devs. I didn't even realise it was triple, I just thought it was double. Whoops. So you've got triple devs, so obviously only one of them needs to get a las cannon. You could just get vengeance rounds on the other 2. You've got melter bomb on the ASM. I mean, yeah, it's... Bruce was fucked. He just lost too much map control. Really nice execution there from Vindicare, proving that, well, loyalist Space Marines are superior to those heretical fools. There you go, 2-0 victory in this early group stage match between these 2 players. Hope you did enjoy, folks. If you want more of that, there is going to be more of these games on the channel for sure. And it's interesting, I think, to see real games, in quotation marks. You know, rather than the maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20, that is the games that actually get sent in for me to cast as replays. Most of the games are like this, you know, most of the games don't even reach tier 3. A lot of the games don't even reach tier 2. Look at that. Bruce literally just got tier 2 and the game is over. So I hope you appreciate some of these real games as well. There's going to be some POV gameplay coming up too. So stay tuned if you want that kind of content. Thank you for tuning in, folks. It's your boy Torpid signing out.